What is up, sexy people? It is Dave, it's Duncan. We're back from Metal Epidemic for another review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Alaska-born, Texas-based Turbid North. The band's new album, The Decline, will be released on January 20th. Self-released on January 20th. This is Turbid North's first new release in 7 years, Duncan.
Yeah, it's been 7 years.
Since their last album, Eyes Alive, which came out in 2015. They are a three-piece band founded in Alaska in the early 2000s.
Never in a million years think this band was a three-piece.
I know. Relocated to Fort Worth, Texas in 2007, and finally delivered their debut album, Orogeny, in 2011 via Unearth frontman Trevor Phipp's Ironclad Recordings. The current lineup of Nick Forkel, Chris O'Toole, and John O'Garrett was solidified in 2012. So, set within a sci-fi world, The Decline is nonetheless rooted in real-life struggles. Forkel describes the concept: it's all a part of one story. It's a collection of songs that delves into the downfall and self-destruction of a person. I went through some personal things that spawned this idea. Real experiences influenced these songs, lyrically and musically. It's darker and more personal for me than any other Turbid North record. The new album was also recorded, mixed and mastered entirely by vocalist-guitarist Nick Forkel.
Talented son of a bitch.
Yes, indeed. Turbid North, we did a little reaction to a track called Slaves from the album. And we'd never heard of the band before we went into that reaction. And
we were really digging it. We were really digging it.
We were.
And then the last section come in, and I think we both got Bell's palsy. Like, our muscles just gave out in our face. It was that fucking disgustingly heavy.
Yeah.
We were like, oh yeah, we have to review this now.
Yeah.
If you get facial paralysis listening to an album, you have to review it. That's the law.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of went into that review not knowing much about the band. We thought they were predominantly doom, but that wasn't the case from that track.
Or the album.
Yeah. This album takes you through a fair assortment of styles.
A journey, Dave? Would you say a journey?
A journey?
A
potpourri of genres, Duncan.
A potpourri.
I don't know.
A pick and mix would be better. A potpourri.
Potpourri.
You don't know, like, potpourri is like, see, this is like, without trying to derail us quickly, because this is the first like standalone album review we've done of the year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It would make more sense in Forrest Gump if he'd said life is like a box of chocolates. You know, instead of doing that, he said life is like potpourri.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get. Because life is like a box of chocolates. You just turn it over, you look at the back, again, or chocolates, because it's a box of chocolates. Potpourri, you don't know what it's going to smell like. You don't know what weird pine cones or fucking dehydrated fucking vegetables or fruit's going to be in there, and you never know the smell.
The quality of this review has taken a decline, which is also the name of the new album from Turbid North.
It's a segue.
What did you think? You go for it. What did you think of The Decline?
I mean, it's like becoming like we should get t-shirts made of this. Like, there's really not a lot to dislike on this. This is a band that are really difficult to pigeonhole.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you come in on Eternal Dying, and specifically The Oppressor, the first two tracks, there are elements here that have a kind of sludgy doominess as well, but the production is so predominantly kind of like quasi, like, post-metal meets industrial. It's very, very cold.
Yeah.
But it fits their sound. It also makes their guitars, which are already heavy, feel even fucking heavier. Just like the weight of this album, I can't stress it enough. It's just really brutally heavy.
Oh yeah.
And then you go through Slaves, and we'd already heard that, so I kind of knew what I was getting with that track. Once again, very heavy. But the album never really rests on its laurels when we get to about the midway part, and then you start getting segments which are very kind of reminiscent of like a heavier Mastodon, or even a bit of Baroness in there. Lots of lead work, lots of cleans. But at the same time, once again, because we're just juxtaposing everything, Like brutal blasts, heavy as fuck drums. I mean, like the drumming on this is fucking sickening.
That
And
production. That production.
it's like a post-metal drum production. You know what I mean? And that's what makes it so ferocious. But like when I mentioned industrial earlier on, those industrial elements are almost on the drums.
Yep,
there are times like a very mechanical sounding drum kit behind this. And I don't mean like using effects, I just mean the way it's been produced. It has a very cold, clinical and precise sound. And it underpins like everything they're doing. But the album continues to sweep and sprawl. So like some tracks are like something like the Drown in Agony will kind of go a little bit more for the jugular while still like sprinkling a little bit of like cleanness over the top of it. And then you get other tracks like A Dying Earth, for example, which are happy to languish in their almost 9 minutes with no vocals. This fucking sprawling instrumental track. And I suppose if you're a three-piece and you're the front man who's the vocalist and the guitarist, you can do an instrumental track for 9 minutes. Like, fuck it, don't want to sing in this song. So we'll make it 3 times the length of everything else in the album. But it really, really works. And I think what Turbid North have done surprisingly well is combine genres that are maybe adjacent, but not wholly transformable into each other. They don't always connect cleanly or well, but with a production that feels like its consistency is key throughout, it manages to merge over some of those jumps in between tracks where you think this probably shouldn't work as well as it does. Like when cleans kick in after you've heard some of the most disgusting like sounding breakdown guitar parts with drums, and then the next track it's like clean pick guitars and we're building. It shouldn't work as seamlessly as it does, and I think it's attention to detail, craft and flow on the album that actually aids that. The album starts off very, very heavy, it then experiments, and then it leads towards massive sprawling, huge monolithic heaviness towards the end, and then very, very smart playing on the last 2 tracks. So like I kind of sat like almost after hearing Sleeves and us joking about, well, I mean, Doom's kind of in there if you stretch for it. It's still in the album if you stretch for it. You know what I mean? It's there. It's in the heaviness of those those guitar parts, which are not in any rush to change chord. Like those big drops. Some of the fucking tracks that start with these big, you're like, oh, what the fuck have we got here? And there is almost a structure as well of allowing things to languish without feeling lethargic. Vocally, it's fucking punishing. If everything else wasn't heavy, I mean, enough. The vocals come in and they sit great in the mix. They don't fall into any lazy tropes either. So they're not like, and I want to preface this by saying I'm not saying post-metal vocalists can be lazy, but post-metal vocalists are usually good at that one tone. And it's a heavy, screamy, sort of shouty, angry, almost kind of like one of those notes Meshuggah hits, but we're just going to do that for the entire track, and it totally works. But there's range in Turbid North, and I think that's what's very, very clever about it, is there's a variety of techniques used across the board, whether it's drumming that's played to more strip things out, or more like aggressive pace switching and like intenseness. Guitar work, which once again is either like ferociously, brutally slow and heavy, but will happily get quicker. I mean, there's tracks here that like go well off, and like there's beautiful guitar solos, and we really get the worth of it there. And then, at the same time, vocals that use a variety of different techniques. And this is all underpinned by the last instrument that I'll mention, which is the fucking hugely big dick swinging bass on this. So fucking heavy, like just underpins absolutely everything to ET, and the production on it is fucking huge. Once again, this may be indicating that it is a 3-piece, but you would expect that. The bass tends to sound more prominent when there isn't an extra guitarist or 2. Distant, we're looking at you. Like playing over the top, but it really is a fucking great album. I think. Like, if you listen to Slaves and your interest was piqued at all on that, it doesn't actually really do justice to the dexterity on the album.
No.
It's a short single, which is probably why they picked it. But I actually think it's maybe one of the weaker songs overall on the album. It has its place, and it definitely is used as a point to code switch up from the previous 2 tracks into track 4, Life Over Death. But I think it's the one where they use a bit of technique and they use a bit of interest, and it is fucking heavy as shit. But I don't think it even gives you a gleam of what this band can do. And I would also say, like, with the variety of techniques on this album overall, and having not listened to anything beforehand, I don't know if this is even the real Turbid North. I don't know if this is them. You're usually the good indicator on this one. I don't know if the previous stuff sounded like this, but this is fucking hugely accomplished. Very, very, very well written. Very, very heavy. And to hear that the band are over every facet of this, whether it's the production or self-releasing it, I mean, it can be done. Some artists are like, like, we'll never get signed, we'll never get a push and all the rest. And then you hear these guys out there fucking killing it. So, this was the album that I was not expecting from the single that I heard, but actually I have been more impressed by the fact that it didn't all sound like Slaves, which is a great track in its own right. But like I say, it's just dipping your toe into the metal pool compared to what everything else does. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one.
Nice.
What about yours? There's certain riffs that come in and certain heavy bits that come in, and the face started to like drop down just a little bit, and I was like, that Dave's headbanging to this. I could tell it was in the air. I was like, yeah, he's headbanging facing due east. His version of the metal mecha. So yeah, you must. This has got you written all over it. I can't imagine for 1 second you didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I think for me, like, even though we'd reacted to Slaves, this album just managed to keep surprising me. I don't think I was quite expecting it to be as diverse as it is. And even though they play with a few genres on Slaves, the album just gives you even more. It's like Slaves was just the tip. You know what I mean? And the album was the shaft.
Oh God!
That shaft was long and it was girthy, I'm afraid.
Was it turbid by any chance?
It certainly was.
Point northwards. Excellent.
It was 43 minutes of awesome, Duncan.
That's the other thing I suppose that is worth touching on. You get a lot of bang for your buck on this 43-minute album.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
You know what I mean?
for sure. Like 43 minutes and it's stuffed with stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
43 minutes, which is also a coincidence, Duncan, because that's how long I also last in bed. That's right, Duncan.
43
this
minutes.
is a perfect shagging album. That is all I'm saying.
I will say that their word on the street would disagree with that estimate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Am I finishing too quickly? Is that what you're telling me right now?
Hey, listen, you leave the listeners in suspense. Is it longer? Is it shorter? Who knows?
Okay, sorry.
Although there are some people out there that heard 43 minutes and winced. You know, like, that's a sesh.
That's just foreplay. In all seriousness, these guys have put out an album that really just hits the mark for me. It's not an album that's all on the surface either. There's it doesn't just kind of pummel you relentlessly for its entirety. This has got depth. It's got layers. It's cleverly concocted. Various. I'm not going to mention cocks anymore. I don't know why I said that. Take that out. There's loads of different dynamic shifts, and from the kind of from the get go, you kind of get a kind of instant feeling this isn't going to be as straightforward as you thought. There's much more than meets the eye. That the opening track, the Eternal Dying, you're introduced to the band via these really kind of atmospheric chords and leads. It's got a bit of a doomy feel, but it's got this kind of like a very post kind of feel, almost kind of stonery, kind of post metal, a little bit of kind of prog in there as well. And I thought maybe this is just like an opening thing. The first tracks is going to be a bit of this to get the album started, but it's not. Like this, the album is littered with this stuff. That the texture and the kind of atmosphere is all over the album. And it works really well, like against the, it's a kind of like a counterbalance against those tracks that just go hell for leather. And a lot of the tracks do build towards that heaviness. They don't just drop you in at the deep end and kind of hold you under. Even track 2, The Oppressor, kind of eases you in kind of gently. It's got a kind of slow moving kind of doom riff. Then it opens up and gives you way more, more kind of pummeling kind of vibes as the track goes on. But even then, I felt like that kind of atmospheric stuff was still kind of lingering in the background. It was always there. Slaves, I felt, was like the first track where they fully like let go. And they venture into that kind of like the grinding, kind of thrashy passages, much more aggressive approach. And that's where I was getting like little shades like Pig Destroyer and stuff like that starting to come through. And the riffs, that, as you said, that bass tone is just so metallic. So, well, when they drop into something more kind of sludgy, it feels like it just kind of carves out its own space in the mix. So like the first 3 tracks, I was kind of like, fucking hell, this is just like giving you everything. There's so many different sides to this band, and that's what's really exciting about this album. You never quite know which way it's going to go, but whatever the style or the structure, it holds your attention.
Because they're really good at it. I think that's the thing. I think we mention this a lot, of bands will try an element to maybe make the album, oh look, we can do a bit of this, and I'm always cynical about that. Are you doing that just to show what you can do? Are you doing that because you can do that and it fits the song? And Turbid North are the very definition of it fits the song and we can do it. So as opposed to, let's learn a new technique for this album. It just feels like they have all the techniques there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Some of the tracks are in and out. They do the business in like 2 to 3 minutes. Others, they're taking a bit more of a controlled approach. Tracks like Life Over Death, which is a little bit longer, a bit more spacious in its style, and they really lean into that kind of doomier, more post-metally kind of sludgy tone. Also a little bit progressive as well, but then not want to be totally predictable in a track like that. They'll throw in a blast beat towards the end, and you're just like, what's going on? But it fits absolutely perfectly, and you won't see it coming.
I was like, it was the first time I was listening to it. You're like, I was going through it. It was like very mesmeric listening to it.
Yeah.
And that way, where like you're just aware that everything's quicker now.
Yeah.
And it was that way. It took. I swear to God, it took me a good 20 seconds to go, Is that a blast beat? Because it's not like, like in death metal, you're expecting it.
Yep.
You can hear the drummers doing like some ridiculous sick fill, and you're like, that blast is coming. Here we go. And this, it was the other, like, I think it was 20 seconds in, and I was like, motherfucker's blast beating. Like, on this song, not on this song.
And something that's not even over a kind of death metal riff or a grinding riff. It's like a kind of sludgy post metal riff. It's just like, what's happening? The middle of the album was where I felt like it was probably the most kind of punishing. It felt like the kind of the meat in the sandwich for me. There was
meat in the sandwich.
way more like blasts and kind of grindy riffs, really filthy kind of sludge tones, and the vocals are absolutely scorching. There are still like kind of small scatterings of like melody and clean lead work on tracks like Drown in Agony, but it's mainly a kind of bass grinder. The middle chunk of the album I felt was the kind of heaviest part. And then they start to kind of combine the two on track 7, the old ones, where they're going kind of full out kind of blast beats and proggy melodic riffs at the same time. But it's clever because it's a great shift into the last part of the album, where they really start to push that more expansive kind of progressive side, where you've got tracks that are like clocking in at 5, 6, 8 minutes long. I thought The Road was excellent. The main riff has almost kind of like southern kind of groove to it. I agree with you. They kind of had some kind of Mastodon-esque kind of similarities as well. It's even in the vocals, but it's also injected with like a very expansive kind of clean guitar part, some acoustic guitar, which were for some reason it's kind of reminding me of like a kind of like Carlos Santana type vibe, in the playing, even the lead work as well. The last track is a stunning closing track. It's called Time. Almost this kind of post-metal kind of slow burner. That builds into this like wall of dissonant blasts and kind of eerie melody. Shares some similarities with the first track, Eternal Dying, in the pacing and the tone, but I felt like the Time, the last track, gives you a kind of better payoff in the end. There's also quite a bit of darkness to this album. And
quantify that, not the band The Darkness, actual not that darkness.
Get your hands off a bubble. I think we mentioned it a little bit on the Slaves reaction. There's this really like ominous kind of feeling that kind of lingers in the background. It's there on Slaves. You can hear it on The Oppressor, unsurprisingly with a name like The Oppressor. The old ones was probably where it was most kind of in your face, and then the end of A Dying Earth is really kind of super bleak. And then the closing track has a bit of a kind of menacing feel in the slower, heavier parts as well. And that was where, like you mentioned in the press thing about the kind of the sci-fi kind of element, that's where I was kind of getting that. It was, you know, had almost like kind of post-apocalyptic type feel to it at times. But it's just like, it's another kind of clever twist in the kind of Turbid North sound, where they've experimented a little more on the decline, and it's absolutely paid off, because it just kind of adds to the kind of overall experience of the album. You mentioned about the previous albums, like
see, this is, I knew you would have done your due diligence.
Like fans of their previous album are maybe listening to this and thinking, is this the same Turbid North? Because some of this sounds different.
Is it quite a departure then?
It's much more expansive, definitely. Right. This is still 100%. This is still Turbid North. You can hear the core elements that are still there from the last album. It's still got a kind of darkness to it and a twisted feel, but this feels like the band have, and not to be stereotypical here, but they sound like they have matured. It's been 7 years since their last album, but their sound has evolved to that next level. It feels like they're pushing the boundaries and not wanting to just deliver a kind of slightly altered imitation of Eyes Alive from 2015. This album feels like its own thing. You know, it's got its own identity, even bigger ideas, and they've managed to blend all these styles together without it sounding messy, in my opinion. But the cool thing is, the material from this album would absolutely fit into a set list with the older stuff as well.
So it's not that dramatically removed from it that it would be like they'd have to tour this material and not the other.
There's enough here on this album that still links back to their older stuff as well. There's still, you know, the grind stuff and all that is still there from the previous album, so it would definitely link up. I like the first couple of listens to this, I was like, yeah, this is really cool, but I found myself enjoying it more on the repeat listens, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of little nuances and little intricacies, and they'll start to become clear after repeated listens. And it is crazy how much they've fit into 43 minutes, you know, without this sounding overfilled with ideas. I think Nick's done a fantastic job of the production. We kind of touched on it already, but I thought the drum tones were just punishing. Like when it kicks into those grind sections, like on like Patience, for example, you feel like you're just being pelted in the face with blast beats. It is just so hard hitting. Guitars sound monstrous. And there's moments on the album where it feels like the mix it's almost about to distort, like it's like almost reached that kind of clipping point. But not in a bad way. It almost just makes the whole thing feel even heavier. As you said at the start, this was right up my street. Definitely ticked a lot of boxes for me. What did you think, rating wise then? What would you score the decline?
See, last year we come right at the bat, more like in our first review, more like that, 5s, just fucking give 5s. And I'm trying to be more pragmatic this year.
Right. Okay.
Trying to reset the scales. So it's not a 5, but it's damn near a 5. It's a 4.5. This is fucking like this is the shit, right? Well, once again, like we talk about it all the time. Like, there are so many bands out there that are just doing their own thing and are really fucking good at it.
Yeah.
I was struggling to, when listening to this, think of things I could improve on.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely, that I think their balance is close to chef's kiss.
Yeah.
And that production is killer. And they've got the songs and material there as well. So, like, from my point of view, it's a 4.5. I would feel gilly if I gave them anything less.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd agree. This absolutely delivers big. You know, I think it's thumpingly heavy in places. So there's that kind of reward of going back to it, because you know it's very satisfying to listen to. A lot of those riffs are just colossal, but it's also very layered and very textured and fluid. And the balance is, as you said, absolutely spot on. I think had they pushed that more like atmospheric side too much, then I think the grind parts might have felt too forced or out of place a little bit. So I think they've nailed it. It really works. Scoring wise, I was the same as you. I was like, first listen, I was like, oh, this is probably up at a 4. I was like really enjoying it. As I heard it more, I was like, there's no way I can justify giving this a 4. This is
Nice.
like, that would just be a fucking slap in the face. So it's definitely better than a 4. It's a 4.5 for me as well. I thought it was
Perfect.
really, really good album. So the Decline by Turbid North is out on the 20th of January, self-released. I will put links below to the band camp, so you can check it out. And let us know what you think. Have a listen to the album. Stick some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is a review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.